fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name's Sean Waskrug, and today we are going to be reviewing Fast and the Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw. Now, for me, I, for the most part, quite enjoy the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, I take it for what it is, which is a fantastically fun popcorn, like summer popcorn flick, where it's like the action set pieces are fun, even though they're ridiculously over the top. The acting's not horrible. You know, you can grab onto the characters very well. And while you're not going to get phenomenal performances, you're still going to enjoy what you're seeing. So when they came out with Hobbs and Shaw doing their own thing with The Rock and Jason Statham, I mean, where can you go wrong? You have two of the most charismatic guys from the Fast and Furious starting their own franchise and breaking away from the mold to do their own thing. Now, whether or not that works is an entirely different situation, so let's go ahead and jump into the review and see what I thought of Hobbs and Shaw. Now, with Hobbs and Shaw, the plot, I mean, let's put it this way, you're not here for the plot, you're here for the action set pieces and the charismatic performances of the two lead characters. But the general plot is you have Vanessa Kirby, who plays Hattie Shaw, who's Jason Statham's sister, who plays obviously Shaw, and basically she's MI6, and she is in the process of trying to take down a virus. But in the process of hunting down and finding the virus, the main villain of the franchise of this particular film, Idris Elba, who plays Brixton, interrupts the op and almost takes the virus, but before he can, Hetty basically injects herself with the virus and escapes. So because of that, Brixton, who has an enormous amount of basically power behind him and also in him as well, basically turns her out to be a traitor, so she is now on the run. Thus comes in Hobbs and Shaw, who are brought in to try and find her and find the virus before it gets released. And then, I mean, that's basically where the rest of the story goes on from there. Now, with this particular film, there's a lot of trailers for this movie, and there's a lot of stuff shown in the trailers. Now, me personally, I'm a guy who likes to avoid trailers after like the first one, because trailers tend to give everything away. Problem was, the very, very first trailer we got of Hobbs and Shaw was 4 minutes long, and it felt like it gave the entire, A, B, C, D, E of the entire film. It does. I'm telling you that right now. If you have watched the trailers of this movie, you have pretty much seen beat for beat, beginning to end, of where this movie goes. You see the final set piece, you see the first set piece, you see everything in this franchise all in that trailer. I mean, yes, there are things in there that are not in the trailers, that are some nice little tidbits, but every action set piece in this movie was in the trailers, and I think that's going to do a great disservice to this film overall because of that. Now, let's go ahead and go with what works with Hobbs and Shaw, and the main thing that works, obviously, is Jason Statham and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. They have great chemistry with one another. They have great back and forth banter, whether it be insults or whether it just is them kicking ass together as a team, which takes a little bit to get into because obviously their characters hate each other. But I mean, both guys, they're gonna bring it in whatever role that they're a part of. So whether the dialogue is a little dry or whether the jokes don't work, they're gonna give it 100% performance overall, and you just can't help but kind of just be zeroed in on them the entire film because they are larger than life kind of characters. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, especially. The surprise performance out of the whole thing definitely goes to Vanessa Kirby as Hattie. She definitely keeps up with both Statham and The Rock through both the film. She's her own kind of unique character, and she's actually probably the most interesting character of the bunch because she's the one that's being introduced to us in this film. And I feel like Vanessa Kirby does a really great job in her performance and actually established herself as an action heroine. I mean, she did a pretty good job in last year's Mission Impossible Fallout. She had a very small role in that, but she was solid in the parts that she had. where this is kind of her coming out party. Because everyone's focusing on Statham and Johnson, that she kind of just sneaks up on you. And you're just like, wow, I really, really like this actress. And I feel like this is her coming out party to a lot of people. And I would not be surprised if we start seeing her get her own action franchise. If not, maybe even become one of the staple points of this franchise. Because that is one thing, too. This movie definitely is going to lead to sequels, because that is the way the story went by the end of this, is that this does end kind of... I mean, it has a finality to it, but it also ends cliffhanger-like. So this is establishing a new franchise. This is establishing more sequels down the road. So if you guys are fans of this film, there are going to be more of these. Because there's one thing you can be for sure on. The Fast and the Furious franchises, whether it be the spin-off series of Hobbs and Shaw or the actual Fast and Furious franchise, we're going to have sequels. Idris Elba, I think, does a solid job as Brixton. He's not given a whole lot of time to develop much of a character outside of he's incredibly overpowered. He's basically, and this is, literally taken out of the film, he's basically a Terminator or Black Superman, which, personally, I mean, he can't fly. That's like the one thing he can't do is fly in this movie. But, yeah, he's incredibly overpowered. Pretty much anything, any situation he's put in, he's able to get out of it relatively simple. Which makes the fights between him and Statham and The Rock kind of also unbelievable, especially towards the final act, because he just seems so unstoppable that how could two humans such as Hobbs and Shaw be able to stop him? And then with the way they do it, well, it looks great on camera. Also still find it kind of unbelievable that he's able to do all these things and survive all these things, but the final act of the film just... I don't really buy that that's what they could do to potentially stop him. But I mean, Idris Elba, he's a charming character or actor as well, just like Statham and The Rock. And those four, including Kirby, definitely keep your eyes attached to the screen. I also liked Isa Gonzalez. She's got a very, very small part in this film. She plays Madame M. Which honestly sounds like Macarena the entire time they talk in the movie. But yeah, she has a real solid role. I hope she gets more to do in the following films, because I actually was really intrigued by her character, but we didn't get enough time to really see her character overall. Obviously, the action set pieces are very, very fun, and a joy to watch. I mean, you would almost think Michael Bay is doing these movies because there's so many explosions. But they are still enjoyable to watch, even though we have seen the bulk of these all in the trailer. There are definitely also two huge cameos in this movie. Not Fast and the Furious cameos, so don't expect to see like Vin Diesel pop up or anything like that. But there are two actors that are in this film that was not in the cast list. They were not advertised, that pop up, that are definitely two huge ones that get you excited when they pop up on screen, and they're an enjoyment to watch while they're on screen. And they're definitely going to be, if not part of this new world, but potentially characters that we're going to look at for future films to come. So be on the lookout for those. They're very hard to miss, obviously. But they're an enjoyment once they're on screen. But yeah, I mean, that's what works mostly with Hobbs and Shaw. Now, what does not work with Hobbs and Shaw, the ending's a little rough. Or not the ending, I'm sorry. The beginning starts off a little rough. I mean, you have a great beginning set piece with Hattie and Brixton, but the first few scenes of Hobbs and Shaw, respectively, are just very corny, and they're very over the top, and just kind of are just like, alright, cool, so they're badasses. We know they're badasses. Let's develop some actual characters, which we finally do get some character development with Hobbs a little bit more with his daughter. But the first introduction of Hobbs and Shaw together is a little rough. I mean, because that's one of the best things they do in the Fast and Furious franchise, is that they do insult each other very, very well. But the first conversation they have, the insults do not work. They're very flat. And that's the thing that works with Hobbs and Shaw, is that when they insult each other, it's funny if there's people around them that can kind of balance out the performances. But when they're just in a room together and they're just doing nothing but talking, trading blows of insults, it's rather flat. And until Vanessa Kirby's Hattie comes into play for both of them, their performances together don't quite work. But then as soon as she comes in, it's a perfect match between all three of them. They're quite enjoyable throughout. There is some editing issues in the film. Certain things where, in one scene, Hobbs is dressed a certain way, and then in the next moment, no time has passed, and there's a part of his attire that's missing, and there's been no explanation for that attire to be missing. There are certain shots where literally the time of the day changes in an instant, and that's not the way weather works. But yeah, and like I said, one of the big parts too is clearly, like I said, most of the stuff's in the trailer. So if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the movie for the most part. But yeah, and the plot's very bare bones. It's the movie's too long. It's clocked in around 2 hours and 15 minutes. They could have shaved off about 15 to 20 minutes of it. There's too many action set pieces. So when you get to the point of the film, you think, okay, we're getting ready to get to the end point. If you've seen the trailer, you know it's not the end, because it's like, well, they still have this whole other huge set piece that they got to do. But in terms of the story, it's like, we got to kind of be getting to the end here, because there's not a whole lot left to do, and instead it's another set piece of it for another 30 to 40 minutes of film. So the movie does feel a little long, and one action set piece too much. But overall, the movie's still enjoyable. It's a good first attempt at a spin-off franchise for the Fast and Furious, because obviously Hobbs and Shaw are going to be doing their own thing now, so I don't see them popping up in the original Fast and Furious franchise anymore, especially Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But yeah, so I mean, this is definitely a good starting point to start off a new franchise. The movie's not great, but it's not awful. And just like all the other Fast and Furious movies, this is one that, even with its shortcomings, you're still going to enjoy, you're still going to have fun with, and it is another mindless summer blockbuster that fulfilled with explosions that you're gonna, ooh and ah and laugh at and have fun with overall. The best way I could explain this is that it's like the action comedy in the 80s, Tango and Cash on steroids, where that was Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. This time we got Statham and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So for anyone who wants to know what this movie's like, it's Tango and Cash meets Fast and the Furious on steroids. But yeah, I'd still recommend it for anyone who likes any of these actors, who likes the Fast and Furious franchise, or who really just wants to go into a movie and just see a good old-fashioned summer blockbuster filled with explosions and action set pieces. Then this movie's definitely going to be for you. Going into the top 10 films of 2019, this movie does not crack my top 10. It's a solid film overall, but it's not going to be one of the most memorable films. It's not going to be something that you're going to probably go back and rewatch over and over and over again, unless you're a huge fan of this franchise. But it's still a solid film. I don't see you going in and hating the film unless you're expecting like this incredibly well-acted, well-directed film, which that's not what this film's selling you. And if you go in thinking that, then you went in with the wrong mindset of this film. But yeah, overall, I do recommend it for people who just want to have fun and watch an action film. Then this is definitely the film for you. But going into the top 10 movies of 2019, like I said, this does not crack the top 10. So the top 10 is going to remain unchanged, with number 1 still being Toy Story 4, number 2 being Avengers Endgame, 3 going to Rocket Man, 4 being Spider-Man Far From Home, 5 being Booksmart, 6 going to Us, 7 being John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, 8 going to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 9 going to Midsommar, with 10 going to Disney's The Lion King, with Long Shot being just outside of the top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys feel like this review is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that way you guys stay up to date while the latest videos will pop up on YouTube. And also don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Next week, we definitely got scary movies to tell in the dark. Definitely a book franchise that I read all the time as a kid. So I can't wait to see how that one pans out. And then if there is a theater around me showing it, Peanut Butter Falcon comes out next week. I'm real intrigued by that film. I really want to see that one. But it also just depends if it's in my area for me to be able to see it. But if I do, you can expect a review for that and scary movies to tell in the dark. Also, don't forget to check out our Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spoiler review that popped up earlier this week with 2 guest stars. So be on the lookout for that. And until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.